Hi, Ollie. Thanks for speaking with me today. Would you mind introducing yourself and introducing Greenleaf Scientific?
Hey David, thank you very much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure. Yeah, my name is Ollie. I am the general manager at Green Leaf Scientific. We are a distributor based out of Dublin, Ireland, and what we do is represent a variety of life science companies in Europe. Typically, our main suppliers would be in the neuroscience field, cell biology, but we also have some other ones in different fields like organomation, for example, who are more in the sample preparation and nitrogen evaporation field. Greenleaf is part of a company called Redbox Direct, which is also in the life science field. And what we do is we offer a managed office to bigger or slightly companies in a different point in their life cycle to have a presence here in Europe as well. What's unique about Greenleaf is that we are mainly staffed by scientists. So I'm a biomedical engineer by trade. We have all of our product managers who sell and support the equipment here in Europe all have a scientific background, and what helps us pride ourselves in support and in being able to represent each of our suppliers to the utmost of our ability here in Europe.
Absolutely. And that is definitely something that has stuck out as a manufacturer, the technical expertise that Greenleaf staff has. One thing I'm very excited about today is to talk about the customers Greenleaf has been able to help in Europe by installing organomation, nitrogen evaporation equipment. And one of the labs I was hoping we could talk about was a research lab in the UK, I believe, that was performing manual evaporations, and they moved towards organomation equipment. If you could talk about that.
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah, we've actually, just as a bit of background, we've been representing you guys, Organomation, here in Europe for the last 5 years, and we've had a lot of interesting case studies. Like I said, the nitrogen evaporator slash sample preparation field was slightly new to us. And thanks to your guys' support, we've learned quite a bit. This case in the UK was, yeah, it was a research lab that were doing kind of manual evaporation for some of their chemical analysis, and they were working with highly flammable and corrosive solvents, things like chloroform and ethyl acetate. As with anything, especially in this field, manual evaporation is very risky in terms of safety, but there's also the inefficiency and inconsistency that comes with having to manually manipulate chemicals like this. You're not going to get very good, reliable results, and it's also going to be slow and with limited throughput. With your assistance and with our knowledge, we were able to recommend a couple of different options to this lab. We had the MULTIVAP line, which was the 9 position system, and then we also recommended a 15 position MICROVAP. In the end, we settled on the 15 position MICROVAP primarily because these people needed to be able to work with smaller tubes. The MICROVAP can accommodate 10 millimeter input tubes, and then also the ability to have 15 different samples simultaneously was a huge increase in throughput on their side of things. The system is also fully automated, as you're well aware, which makes huge improvements on the safety side of things. And yeah, there's pretty much minimal manual handling needed. You plug it in and you set it all up and you let it run. And I think they were extremely happy with the outcome that they got with the MICROVAP.
That's great to hear. Yeah, certainly there's a whole number of laboratories who are doing evaporation by hand. That's one of the biggest things we're combating. People who are doing that one sample at a time, which is really not the best place for them to be in terms of their throughput needs. So being able to do 15 at a time is certainly a big increase in their efficiency. And in this case, it sounds like safety was a big element as well with the corrosive solvents.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I know also a big decision on our side of things is budgets and the fear of investment for these kind of things. And in the end, actually, this group did take a little bit longer to decide on what system they needed, but I think it was justified because we were able to find the right solution to help them out. And a couple of months down the line now, they've had great success, which is really nice.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's one nice thing about organomation being a real specialist in the nitrogen blowdown field is that we have a lot of different configurations, a lot of different ways we can customize the equipment. So, what I think you identified in this situation was both of those product options would have been an improvement over how they were currently doing the process, but you were able to settle on the best one, which I'm glad it led to the customer being very happy with their workflow.
It's typically what we see too. Anytime a customer comes to us, no matter what their requirements are, we have Yeah, minimally two or three different configurations that fit. So I mentioned the MULTIVAP was the other option. It can accommodate smaller tubes, which is what they looked for, but actually the recommended range was a little bit larger than what they were looking for. So that's why the MICROVAP in the end was the best fit.
Yeah, and that is a good example of the customization we offer in terms of the MULTIVAP typically is the much larger in terms of batch size, but the 9 sample configuration is unique, but it works for some customers depending on their need. Moving on, a large growth area that we're experiencing both in the US and worldwide is related to PFAS analysis. And I believe you assisted a customer in Germany who is doing that work.
Yes, exactly. So we were working with a company that do a lot of environmental analysis, and as you mentioned, obviously PFAS is a big part of that. And the main requirements they would have had was handling the PFAS samples as well as other organic solvents, and they were doing things like MTBE, hexane, dichloromethane, ethanol, etc. So they had quite a wide range of requirements. They were doing it in these 50 milliliter vials in a sand bath for PFAS analysis. But again, another issue similar to with the manual things, that the manual situation is their handling of the vials could cause, if basically the vials were floating in a water bath and if they weren't secured properly, they could cause instability. They had quite a wide range of tube sizes that they needed to use for this analysis. There was solvent compatibility issues as they were using quite a few different solvents. And then it's also quite rigid in terms of the flexibility of their application. So they needed something versatile enough to handle the PFAS as well as all the other solvents that they were using. Yeah, again, with your guys' help and some of the knowledge we've had from previous companies doing this stuff, there's a couple of options that this group could have used. In this case, it was again, so the 30 position MULTIVAP where they can have temperature control. This is mainly for the solvent analysis side of things, or an N-EVAP again as well for slightly larger tube sizes and higher sample throughput. But for PFAS itself, I think the 64 position water bath MULTIVAP was the best solution for them. Yeah, and a couple of the reasons why we settled on that one too was that it was able to hold these 50 milliliter tubes that they were already using without any issues about the handling and instability that they would have had in the way they were doing it before. You can also control the heating a lot more carefully with the water bath system that we provide or that Organomation provide. And then there's also the flexibility that you can actually use different tube sizes as well. So it is the versatile option like they were looking for.
Absolutely. For PFAS analysis, we've seen both the N-EVAP and the MULTIVAP work well for customers. And just to give you some background, the EPA drinking water methods, specifically 533 and 537, reference the Organomation N-EVAP for drying down samples after solid phase extraction. So, in a research setting, people doing PFAS research at universities will rely on the N-EVAP, partially because it's the instrument stated in the method, but also because you're working with slightly smaller batch sizes. So, doing 12 or 24 positions at a time is fine. Where on the other side of that, the commercial laboratories in the US that are seeing their PFAS analysis needs skyrocket, they're transitioning more towards the multi-VAPs where they're able to dry down up to 100 vials at a time. And from what I've seen, most of the PFAS analysis is utilizing pretty standard vial sizes. In this case, you mentioned the 50 ml vials. So that is well suited for batch evaporation, which is why the MULTIVAP can be such a good fit there.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you say that the obvious differences between academic versus commercial. So this was a commercial company, and in the end, they actually settled for both the N-EVAP and the MULTIVAP, exactly probably for the reasons you mentioned, where they want to stick to the standard but also increase their throughput at the same time.
Absolutely. No, that's great to hear. Well, Ollie, I definitely appreciate your time today, and thanks for introducing us to Greenleaf.
My absolute pleasure anytime. It's been a joy representing you guys here in Europe for the last 5 years, and we're looking forward to even more interesting cases in the future.
Thanks, Ollie.
Thank you very much.